Hi everybody. Well, today we're going to be looking at franchise businesses. These are the ones that you've probably recognised when you've been driving around and looking at different businesses like McDonald's and KFC and those kind of things. So we're going to be taking a look at why people would actually want to operate a franchise business. Well, the main thing to remember is that franchising is where we're actually purchasing the right to own and operate the business that somebody else has actually developed. And by using their system, our chances of being successful are actually greatly increased. The other thing to remember is that of all these well known brands that you can see on the screen, adding up over $140 billion to the Australian economy each year, but also almost 500,000 jobs are created in franchising. So, under a franchise agreement, a person buys the rights to use the business name and distribute the products and services of an existing business. So, the person who buys those rights is known as a franchisee, and the person who's selling them is known as a franchisor. So, why would somebody want to buy a franchise? Well, the main reason that people want to buy a franchise is because the chances of success are a lot greater. Because what you're actually doing is buying a business that has already been developed and the systems have already been worked on, and they know that they're generally very successful. But in addition, it allows people to run their own business, to work the hours that they would want to work, and also make sure they've got all the support and training that they need to turn that business into a successful one. And 7-Eleven is a good example of that. So the franchisor is going to give to the franchisee. They're going to get a known and advertised business name. It would have a good reputation, hopefully, attached to it. They'll also be giving them the required training, be able to develop their staff. They'll give them a method of doing business and provide them with all the management skills and materials that they'll need. And the franchisee, they're going to supply the money and the labour. They're going to also be the one that operates the franchise business, and they would therefore need to agree to go by to abide by all the terms and conditions of the franchise agreement. Red Rooster is a good example of a franchise business model. The franchisee does the following things and listed on the left of the diagram. Obviously, they run the business in a day-to-day fashion. They need to recruit and train their staff. They make sure that their business meets the franchisor quality standards. They'll often support the local community. McDonald's and Brumbies and Baker's Delight are great examples of franchises that do that, supporting primary schools and sporting teams and so on. And the franchisor, well, they're the one that is operating the name or the big business itself. So they're going to get very good supplier rates from their suppliers. They'll manage all the leases and property negotiations of the real estate involved in the franchise. They'll provide all the marketing, IT, legal, operations, and HR support. And most importantly, they would prepare the franchisees with a full induction process so that the franchisee, when they start running the business, has been well and truly trained in what they'll need to do. F45 is an interesting franchise operation. It's becoming very popular, and the information on the slide here just talks about some of the costs involved in working or running a F45 training franchise. So, although there's an initial cost of $90,000, the total investment would be significantly more than that. Having said that, it is a very popular form of fitness training, and people who were able to come up with that kind of money and run an F45 training franchise would be able to seek that balance that they would have wanted between their work and lifestyle. Well, one of the reasons people start a franchise, and probably one of the main reasons, is that the chances of success are much greater than if you started a business on your own. And of course, you're getting a well recognized name and hopefully a reputation for quality that goes with that particular name. And as the quote here is actually saying, it's probably about 3 times more likely that you'd be successful running a franchise than if you ran your own independent business. Well, unfortunately, not all businesses are successful, and in particular, small businesses tend to be the ones that experience difficulty in their early years. And generally speaking, a sole trading business, as you can see from the chart here, only about 50% of them survive the first 3 or so years. Um, as it gets a bit bigger, up to 19 staff, the survival rate increases to 63%. But it is still quite low. So, for a lot of businesses, particularly small businesses, a franchise gives them a much greater chance of being successful. There are a number of advantages of franchising. The first of them, we were just saying, is that the risk of business failure is reduced because you are actually buying a proven business idea that has actually already worked. Another advantage is that normally there is a market established for the particular product, so you don't need to test the market or do any research. A recognised brand name and trademark gives the business straight away a benefit from being able to trade off that particular name. And the other thing, of course, is the franchisor gives you a lot of support. So they'll be able to give you a lot of training and advice to get that business up and running. You don't necessarily need prior experience because the franchisor should make sure, and normally does, that the franchisee has got all the skills, etc., that they need. It does enable people to run a business and compete with big businesses because they actually have the support from all the other franchisees and from the franchisor as well. And a very important part of running a franchise or an advantage is that the franchisee normally has an exclusive right to their territory, which basically means that the franchisor wouldn't be able to put another franchisee in your same area who would obviously then cannibalize your particular customers. So, if, for example, you had a particular franchise in Kew, the franchisor would probably not be allowed to put another franchisee in the same area of Kew because that is your territory. You've got exclusive rights. And that's important because you don't want the franchisor, I should say, to actually try and, take your market and get another business in there as well to try and compete with it. That wouldn't be good at all. Banks generally like to, if they are going to lend money, they generally like to lend money to franchises simply because the business has got a plan, it has worked in the past, so it's a little bit more of a better risk for them. And the other thing that we probably don't make enough um, out of is the fact that the other franchisees can be great supports because they've been running the businesses as well and they've made them work. And in addition to that, there's normally very good relationships with suppliers already established. Not everything is an advantage. Let's have a look at some of the negatives. Well, the first of them is it's going to be quite expensive to purchase a franchise because the better the franchise, the more it's going to cost. So there is a higher initial cost in doing that. In addition, the franchisee is going to have restrictions on how they can operate. So if you're running a McDonald's, you can't just come out and invent your own burger and start selling it. You would be restricted in terms of what you can offer, where you purchase your products from, the prices you can charge, all of those things. And one of the things franchisors will actually do is obviously monitor what the franchisee is up to. And for some people, they wouldn't like that. That would be intrusive. In extreme situations, the franchisor themselves might go out of business. The other thing that's really interesting is other franchisees could give your business a bad name. So if one of them doesn't do their job properly, unfortunately, the whole businesses tend to suffer. So you can imagine if a KFC was selling food that made people sick, well, unfortunately, all the other KFCs would be impacted by that, even though it might have only been one particular franchise doing the wrong thing. All the profits, or a percentage of the profits anyway, and the sales need to be shared with the franchisor. That would be part of the agreement. So all the money you make isn't actually yours. You need to allow some of it to go back to the franchisor as part of the agreement. And those agreements tend to be quite inflexible. They're very difficult to get out of. So let's have a look at some of the more well-known or some of the more successful businesses in Australia that are franchises. Number one is Poolworks, and you might have been surprised to see this, but Poolworks is actually a very successful franchise, been around for more than 25 years, has over 100 stores and 300 mobile service vans, and obviously they look after people's pools in their backyard. And it would cost between 50 to 100,000 to purchase a Poolworks franchise. Battery World is another one you guys have probably heard of before, as the name suggests, selling a lot of batteries to just mobiles, home appliances, even cars. Foodco is the company behind names like Muffin Break, Jamaica Blue. They're very successful in the catering industry or the food industry. The Coffee Club is one of the businesses that you guys would be familiar with. It's actually one of the more expensive franchises as well, as you can see here, ranging from almost $500,000 to $700,000. But it is a very well-known name, and as a result of that, they can afford to, I guess, charge a fairly high price for their franchise, given the reputation that they've been able to generate. Mad Mex is a Mexican restaurant, relatively new one. Gutter Vac, which might sound a bit strange, but what they actually do is clean the gutters with, or take vacuum cleaners and clean out the gutters so there's no leaves in them, which means that when it rains, the gutters don't overflow. And it's a relatively inexpensive franchise, between $80,000 to $120,000 to have a gutter vac franchise.